Watch The Atheist Experience live Sundays at 4:30 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTAXP and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callaxp.
It's time to get sexy on Secular Sexuality.
Hello and welcome. This is Secular Sexuality, the ACA show with the most leather and glitter. My name is Christy Powell, and I'm joined again tonight by our fashionable co-host, Miss O'Kist.
Hi.
And with us tonight is Queen of the Bears and Miss World Bear 2022. Welcome, Daddie Danger.
Hi. Welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, super excited to have you here.
Yeah, it's probably the most awkward moment I have.
We'll have so many more awkward moments to come.
Yeah, no
Don't
doubt,
worry.
no doubt.
Well, tonight's poll asks, is gender more who you are or what you do? And you can weigh in on that live or and catch the results at the end of the show. But in the meantime, we're going to go on a bear hunt.
Ooh, a bear hunt.
Bear hunt. That's true. Don't be scared. We're not going to really hunt. It'll be fine. But we can overdo it. We can't underdo it. So,
Might as well go through it.
I guess so.
All right.
So if you want to call in with your questions or stories, you can call us at 512-991-9242 or at tiny.cc/callsex because the show is coming now.
All right, well, Daddie, I'm going to start with you and give the audience a chance to get to know a little bit about you by learning what's got you turned on this week.
Ooh, what's got me turned on this week? Well, I just got back from Los Angeles. I was out in Los Angeles for the LA Leather Bear competition at the LA Eagle, or Eagle LA. But while I was there, I was hanging out with the Los Angeles puppy, Kieran Hound, and they introduced me to On Guard, which is a podcast/YouTube video series done by Mr. Christopher and Race Bannon and some of their other very sexy Leatherman friends. And they were talking about the history of bathhouses is the first episode that I caught. But there's, I think, 11 episodes now, and they are rocking and rolling with really sexy leather stuff that they're talking about. And it's a cigar format social, so they're just leather clad, daddy looking folks and talking about all kinds of leather stuff.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, what was the name again?
It's called On Guard.
On Guard on YouTube or your podcast app. Miss O'Kist, what's got you revved up right now?
As always, it's something disturbing if you think about it as being turned on. I am on more of a post-apocalyptic wasteland kick. So watching The Last of Us has got great practical effects as well as non-practical effects, and it's less depressing than the real world. So.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but a little bit. Dark, scary, terrifying, post-apocalyptic. Nice escapism right now. Yeah, great.
Are you into like the zombie ASMR? Are you in surround sound with it,
The clicking is very disturbing.
It really is. The sound design matches the practical effects and everything else. It's a wild show worth checking out. But let's get into it. I know that a lot of folks are going to be watching.
What's turning you on?
But what's turning me on? Well, I'll tell you what. I do this so often that I don't always want to bother people. But I will totally admit that I am completely turned on right now, honestly, by the Oscar nominations that came out on Tuesday.
Hey, okay.
I was very, very excited to see 11 nominations for Everything Everywhere All at Once, a movie that we talked about on the show a handful of times. If you still haven't caught it, you should. It's absolutely fantastic. It was really exciting to see that get a number of nominations. I understand that the Academy of Performing Arts is an imperfect institution. Last year's Academy Awards clearly showed that. We don't need to get into all of it. But it is kind of a bellwether for the entertainment industry in a lot of ways. And after the Oscars So White campaign a handful of years ago didn't really move the conversation forward in interesting or exciting ways. I'm excited to see that this year's round of nominees actually are pretty diverse, pretty interesting, and there are so many great films that my partner and I have been able to catch that we would have never otherwise seen, and it's just been a lot of fun. So I would really encourage anybody, even if you hate award shows, even if you have no interest in watching the ceremony, which is totally valid, check out that list of movies, because there's some great stuff people I don't think would otherwise have learned about.
Yeah, I mean, how many of us queer adults started as theater kids?
Yeah, no, fair to say.
Yeah. Neurodiverse theater kids.
Venn diagram is like that.
Yeah, a lot of overlap.
And if you're not here for the
there.
movie, you're here for the score because you're a neurodiverse band kid.
Our costume designer.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, well, let's jump into the conversation, because I have no doubt that there are folks who saw the thumbnail and the show description and are really trying to figure out, like, what is first of all, what is a leather daddy if it's not just a joke on Arrested Development that kind of went over our heads, right? Like, what do some of these terms mean? And obviously, like, no label or adjective can fully capture a person. But I think there's a lot for us to learn tonight about you and about the world you live in just by breaking down some of the ways you describe yourself. So, if I may, what the hell is a leather lady bear?
Yeah, so I think it's everything that is a leather bear, but just ladied.
Ladied? Okay, got it.
I'd like to say that, so bear culture, I think that one of the first kind of mentions of bear culture was in Drummer magazine in an article called Who's in the Zoo? And it started to stereotype men into these kind of categories of animals based on their physicality. And so bear culture kind of originated out of this muscular, like hyper-masculine stereotype. They were generally bigger, they were rougher, gruffer, not always what you would consider like club kids or like circuit party folks, who might be your slender-bodied, more like twink associated folks. And by the way, I should like make a disclaimer that I'm speaking as Daddie Danger. I'm not talking for all bears. I'm not talking for all leather culture. I'm not talking for, the queer community or the gay community or any of these other communities. I'm just talking as me. And as my friend Connor likes to put, I'm only here to talk about my own special brand of bullshit. So, that is the Daddie Danger show. So going back to bears, so, there was this kind of diversion of like urban queer, like gay culture in clubs and nightclubs and things like that, discos. But then you also had this other side, which is kind of more rugged, motorcycle culture, but also like camping and going out, out back, outdoors. And with that, you kind of have like rugged sexuality. But bears are like that hyper-masculine trope, right? Bigger. So for me, growing up as a 6'2" plus-size person, with lots of gay family, I've joked for a really long time that I'm also a bear. I'm attracted to bears. I mean, who's generally not attracted to like 6'8" giant? I am. I'm attracted to those people.
Everyone who's got taste. All people of culture.
People with taste, people of culture, sure.
But I've joked for a long time that I'm a bear, and it was kind of this funny thing, like among friends. It's like, oh, like women can't be bears, ha ha ha. And then I have some friends who are the House of Three Bears in Dallas, and so it's three guys who live together, and they're all bear identified. And then I was like, I'm Goldilocks to the House of Three Bears, and that really didn't feel very good for me because it was like, I'm not really Goldilocks. I am a bear, And I think around 2017, 2018 is when I found leather culture. I'd always kind of like positioned myself outside of leather culture because I thought it was more masculine, and I was really trying to fit into the femme world and be smaller and make myself tiny, and there's a lot of weight loss culture and things like that. But as I got away from that and went into this world where I found leather folk and then bears, I started to identify with my leather family, mostly because we had a shared set of values. And I really understood that you don't have to look like Toms of Finland to be leather. That's definitely a concept everyone has. Well, I say everyone, but it's a mainstream concept that leather looks like Toms of Finland, right? And
Sure.
those are like 2 Dorito chip like stacks of human in leather. And they also have like giant bulges and muscles and just man's
Body hair and
yeah.
masculine, manly man.
Yeah.
Heft.
Right. This is sexy. That's why we're here. But as I started to identify as leather and really come to understand that I can make leather look like me, I can femme it up. I can almost take it on as like a form of drag in that it becomes performance art.
Yeah.
In a way. But then with that, accepting myself into bear culture was this great step into body positivity. And I think that in the bear community, that is one thing that I have really taken away from that group of people that have accepted me into their world. And I'm, part of that now is like, if you go to a bear event, everyone is in whatever they want to wear. So you're at the pool party, and if you want to wear a Speedo and a harness, it doesn't matter if you are extra small or a 6 or 7X. Everyone is in whatever they want to wear, and people are graciously accepting each other. And I find a lot of community in that, and
Yeah, well, so you've been really like active and involved in the local Austin like leather and kink communities. Can you talk at all about some of the like leadership positions, or really just your I suppose relationship with what I'm going to maybe call like communal sexuality, organized sexuality? I'm not even sure how to really frame that.
Yeah, so I think that there's a couple things, and they're not all the same, but sometimes they become interchangeable.
Sure.
So there's like the kink community, which might be more kind of oriented towards BDSM or power dynamics and things like that, more of your fetish orientations. There's the leather community, which, at some point, like your Venn diagram starts to like, overlap in different directions. So there's kink, there's leather, there's bear. So not all big realization for me. Not all gay men are kinky.
Yeah.
Not all leather people are kinky. Like, I mean, they're kind of, but there is that overlap of motorcycle culture that aren't necessarily, like fetish folks. They're leather and they're motorcycle culture, but they're not necessarily like BDSM oriented people.
I honestly love that we're getting to do this, just because like the anthropology of all of the different, again, not just kink, not just leather. I don't even know necessarily how to categorize everything. And I don't know that we need to obsessively label and say, well, these people are like this and those people are like that.
Right.
But there is so much here that the larger culture just misses and understands. I mentioned before we started, leather is probably the greatest like knowledge gap that I'm aware of in myself when it comes to communal sexuality. I wish I had a better term even, but just people who are willing to not necessarily have big orgies and sex parties together, although that may be part of it for a lot of these communities, but people who are wanting to express their gender identity, express their relationship dynamics, express just different aspects of their sexuality in a community way, in a way that they're interacting with other folks. It's almost, I think, invisible to the larger culture oftentimes.
Well, it's invisible, but it's not invisible because it becomes other, and then so it's
overlooked.
Just like
Maybe
it's
is better
just
term.
like those folks, over there. I think though 50 Shades of Grey, while it did us a lot of disservice, I think it also served our community in bringing forward that this shit's okay. Like, it's okay to be different, and it's okay to be interested in things that aren't necessarily like mainstream, and it's okay to have like a little kinky experience every now and then, and if you're more into it, then there's community out there for you.
Yeah, and as problematic as that particular piece of art is, yeah. Yeah.
It's Twilight fan fiction. It's problematic.
It's problematic. It's messy. Yeah. As problematic as that particular piece of work is, it also kind of highlights this notion that kink is not just kinky sex, right? It's not just having sex that involves whips and chains and whatever else, but actually like a relationship dynamic and how that can be valid too. I think that's new information for a lot of people.
Yeah. I think as humans, we have an innate desire to belong.
Sure.
You know, and we see that in scientific studies and things like that. You know, there's some addiction studies. Was it in the Void of Screams? That's not the right title. There's a book that actually studied folks who came back from Vietnam, some soldiers who came back from Vietnam who had addiction issues while they were in country, and then basically they got back to the stateside and they rejoined their communities, and their addiction just separated. You know, they rejoined and they became, you know, back into the culture that they came from, and they had all this community around them and support, and they separated from their addiction. And you know, we push people out sometimes when, you know, they're struggling with their own issues and, you know, having poor behavior and things like that around their addiction. But really, you know, people are struggling to belong. And I think that we see that in our leather and our alternative sexuality communities and folks who are, you know, figuring out who they are, trying to express the difference of gender, that, you know, that struggle inside, you know, in their first stages of realizing who they are as a person. They still want to belong. And I think that that's what our alternative sexuality communities really brings to the table. And I think sometimes we do a really good job of being inclusive, and then sometimes we do a really shit job of being inclusive.
No doubt. Yeah. I mean,
know?
so often we do build these communities to then only use them as exclusionary devices and further separate that us and them dichotomy.
Well, and as a woman in bear culture, you know, sometimes there's gatekeeping, you know, that exists. You know, there's male-only spaces, and sometimes those are cis male-only spaces. I think we're seeing some of that diversion right now in the leather community. I don't know if you've kind of tuned into International Mr. Leather, International Mr. Boot Black, the conversation right now, but the Boot Blacks kind of unified and walked out because of the transphobic nature of
policies.
Some of the things. So, you know, we're doing a good job and sometimes including people, and then we're doing a shit job on the other side of it too.
Moving forward where we can.
I think that's something, though, that's been a problem with a lot of communities, because I've seen you know, similar arguments in drag, burlesque. Like,
oh yeah, like, are you a cis femme drag artist? What?
Right, and I think
Yeah.
I think we're kind of expanding, you know, what gender means in a lot of different ways, and I think a lot of communities are very slow to catch up, and it's disheartening at first, but I think, like, if people are walking out over it, people are taking a stand, so it's hopefully something that's moving forward and getting better. But I think you also see it, like, with some of our bearded drag communities, you know, bearded drag versus non-bearded drag. I was having this cool conversation with a bearded queen, and she was talking about how Texas is, like, our drag scene seems to appear more like our drag artists need to represent the feminine side of drag instead of, like, being able to have a beard and also be a drag artist.
Clear it up and intentionally sort of fuck with the idea of gender, play with it, see it as a performance, and a performance that can be goofed around with.
Yeah. I mean, but also, like, you know, I don't want to say goofed around with, like, you know, but it's this opportunity to be transgressive, right? And to stop people in their path and to make people think about gender and our social constructs of who we are as people. I think going into the bear competition, I had a lot of conversations with myself about who am I and like, who the fuck am I to like talk about being a woman in bear culture and like, you know, there's a big community of women in bear culture and we call them mama bears. And they are like female leaders and organizers and protectors in the bear community. And, you know, there are many, many strong women who identify as mama bears. And, you know, I do lots of the similar things that mama bears do, but me as a person and me as a bear, I don't identify as a mama bear. And that became a point of, I don't want to say contention, but interest in my contest. It's like, oh, but you're a woman. Like, you have to be a mama bear.
Have you noticed?
And I'm like, no, I you know, I had a radical hysterectomy at 29. Like, I don't associate with motherhood. I don't associate with being a mama. Like, I would scratch my eyes out if you call me mommy. You know, so I'm Daddie Danger. You know, I definitely identify in this interesting space between presenting as high femme, and you know, you'll often see me in like corsetry and like giant boobs out and like stilettos and like giant boots and really kind of, you know, the silhouette of like a plus size cis femme person, and then I'm also like 6'8", and I come in like a kaiju, or I'm gonna like stomp your city, you know, and then
still embodying that bear leather space,
giant bear leather space, yeah. And you know, bear identity allowed me to take up space and be that person that I wanted to be in the world, and not just kind of make my physical persona smaller.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of times women are told to sit down, or be quiet, or, you know, you can't be too like opinionated because then you're bitchy. You know, there's like, you're too much, and you're too this, or like you need to be less.
And being a lady leather bear is aggressively saying, no, I'm going to be all of me.
I'm going to be all of me. There's this the thing, like, it's called the cobra position, and it's like when you're getting ready to like do public speaking, you like kind of come up and do the cobra and you like take up space. It's like the cobra is really my bear. I'm like I do that before I go out as bear. I'm like
Yeah. So why compete in the World Bear competition? Why was it important for you to, you know, show up and form your platform and really be out front in that way?
Yeah. So originally I was going to compete in the Miss Texas leather competition because before COVID, for World Bear, there was like, oh, you have to be a previous title holder to be a competitor. And then after COVID, they were like, you know, people haven't had an opportunity to compete in these things. And like, we're going to, you know, kind of release
Open the field.
Yeah, open the field. So I was originally going to compete for Miss Texas Leather. And I think I caught COVID very early on, or, you know, in February of 2020, they're like, you have pneumonia and 103-degree fever, and you feel like butts, like smashed butts, and not the good kind of smashed butts. You know, so I flew home from El Paso after a work trip, and I completely missed the Miss Texas contest, and I was incredibly heartbroken. So I first heard of the World Bear titles from Bear World magazine. They had an article on Facebook, and it came across my feed, and it was Nikki Wireman, Les Bear, Miss World Bear 2019. And I was like, who is that person? Like, I want to know her. And immediately, like, I sent her a friend request, like, completely cold, like, hey. And then I sent her a message, I'm like, hey.
Hi.
No, it wasn't even like, hey. It was like, hey, who are you? I want to know you. probably like creeper stalker, chick out of the background is like, and she messaged and is like, hey, and I was like, I saw your article. I see that you're Miss World Bear. Like, that's amazing. Like, let's talk. Like, I read her whole article. And then she and I had several phone calls and we were just talking. And then I came across the Miss World Bear 2018, who's Brooklyn Onyx, or Ocean Onyx, and Brooklyn DeMore. She has both the United Court title and then also a Miss World Bear and Onyx title, Onyx Leather. And so I was like, these are women who embody the same characteristics that I find really attractive in other like women, people who are like me. Mm-hmm. And so I've started following the World Bear group. And from there, I found like Goldilocks groups and the Klondikes.
See what you did there.
Yeah, right? Yeah. And then, for a while I've joked that I'm a glitter bear. So basically, I'm kind of in this place where it's like you joke about yourself until it becomes real. That little kernel of truth at the heart of every joke. Yeah, right?
It becomes a lifestyle.
It does. And so for me, I talk about being a glitter bear, and it's because I like to sparkle and, I like to express myself in wonder, and, I like to be on the dance floor and like have the lights and have the shiny outfits and do the things. And I mean, glitter is amazing. Like, you're impressive with all of your rhinestones.
It makes everything better.
Right? So yeah, glitter bear.
Yeah. Well, so for folks like me who are kind of unfamiliar with leather culture, can you walk us through a little bit about what the competition looks like? What that actually entails to compete?
Yeah. So there are competitions at different levels. So there are kind of like bar competitions, which is like, you strut around in your jockstrap and you're like, oh, I'm sexy. I'm going to represent this bar. And really, throughout leather culture, we had, sexy icons that represented bars that really drove traffic into the bars. And so then you have kind of regional titles, which Miss Texas would be a regional title, right? Because it's the entire Texas. And then so Miss World Bear, Mr. World Bear, World Pet, those are international titles. And so it's kind of across the world. Mm-hmm. And so what was your question?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I'm curious, like, what does it look like to compete? Okay. Yeah, I mean, is there a poise category? Like, is there a swimsuit competition? I know it's not Miss Universe.
Like 4 days of amazing gay leather pageantry.
Yes.
And I'm talking like down home Texas pageant, plus bear, plus gay, plus queer, plus amazing,
plus
furries, plus go-go parties and pool parties. And because it's a bear event, there's food. And I'm talking like, catered meals and also the late night bear den snacks. Mm-hmm. Because you have to continue to fuel yourself after you've had opportunities in the den of sin. So the competition was 4 days long. Mm-hmm. So we started on Thursday and we met up and all the contestants came together. But prior to the actually being on site, we had like a Facebook chat and we were getting to know each other and we were talking about, the competition and we're forming relationships. And so if you imagine like 8 or 9 people just having this completely immersive experience in putting themselves out there there were like 675 people at this conference, I think is like around where they were. But you're putting yourself out on stage, you're putting your thoughts, your feelings, and you're going into, so Thursday night was swimwear. And I'm like, well, how do you, like, I'm a plus size chick. Like, what are we doing with swimwear? Like, am I supposed to wear like a jock strap and some suspenders? Like, but you have to really think about who you are as a person and how you're going to express yourself in the categories that they give you. Mm. And then you get to write these like sassy little bios that they read before you walk on stage, so it's like, this is Daddie Danger, And I had some really great music, and it was like, you can call me daddy. And then, there's also pop questions, which is random bullshit that the judges or other people have come up with, and no one knows what the pop questions are, and then you just kind of fishbowl them on stage and you read the pop question. And I think my favorite one was like, what 3 things are the most important in a bear's kitchen? Wasn't my question, but it was like basically peanut butter and jelly and the man to eat it off me. Like,
Perfect.
Right.
Perfect.
Yeah, but it gives it gives the crowd an opportunity to kind of see who you are.
Yeah,
and
explore the personality and this expression.
And you have to answer like off the top of your head. So, it's kind of like what you're thinking while you're also like beaming with lights and knowing that there's like several hundred people out there, but all you can hear is their Grindr notifications.
So there is a category for poise.
Yeah. So then Friday, we did fantasy skits and our theme skits. So the theme was heroes and villains. And so it was, who are you as a hero or a villain, and how are you going to defeat your nemesis on stage? And my nemesis, I kind of created this floating onstage mirror as Miss Bikini Body, the pervasive mentalist. Mm-hmm. I think most women, I'm not going to say every woman, but most women kind of, they battle that stereotypical, socially acceptable, like, media push of like what a woman's supposed to be like, and we talk about that in the Bikini Body, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's one of those like myths of womanhood. Mm-hmm. You're supposed to have a bikini body. Get summer ready. I'm like, bear summers are like coming out of the cave, I'm gonna eat.
Yeah, you've got a body, put on a bikini.
Yeah, exactly. And then so the fantasy is, what is your fantasy? And like put it out there on stage. And so I really enjoy blasphemous role play. And so I came out in my nun outfit and I did some burlesque after, spending a couple years hanging out with Miss O. Like I've learned a thing or two. So yeah, I burlesqued out of my nun's robes and then down into leather corsetry and seduced my priest partner, who was like, back, you foul woman, demon. No, I don't want it. I want it. Yes, I don't want it. I want it. Kind of that. I got a 3-day Facebook ban for posting those photos.
That's how
Fantastic.
you succeeded.
Right.
Right. So yeah, fantasy, theme wear. And then on Saturday, there's a interview portion. And generally, interviews are like 10 to 15 minutes long, and there's a panel of judges. So it's you just kind of standing and or sitting there, like watching fresh faces, asking you crazy questions. And, the whole point of the interview is for them to provoke you and to see how you answer questions and, kind of push the edge to see if you're going to be a good steward of the title, but also how do you speak about yourself? How do you speak about your community? And when you are pushed into kind of this emotional angle, like how are you going to respond? Mm-hmm. Are you going to come out like a feral raccoon, like, or do you come out poised, and you start talking about the issues and, you approach people with different opinions and values, with grace. So yeah.
It seems like a lot of like pageants in general, it tends to be the title holder's like an ambassador of sorts. So you want somebody who's going to be able to carry that standard well, because I know you've been traveling a lot with it.
Yes.
Like a lot. So if you're going to choose somebody to represent, like you said, like values and your values and culture, you're going to want someone who can represent it well.
Yeah. And hopefully I'm doing that well this evening and not sounding quite like an asshole. But again, I am with my own brand of Daddie Danger bullshit.
Right. Yeah, exactly. This is your brand, your personality in that sense. And I really appreciate it. My partner loves, or while we're cooking, she's been watching like Miss Congeniality movies, and she loves Dumpling on Netflix.
So one of our contestants, Connor, he came out as the Statue of Liberty, and like that was part of his piece, his swimwear. Absolutely gorgeous. This beautiful little ginger bear, you know, is this like Statue of Liberty is like my favorite day is, you know, April 20. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, just the notion of taking that and being able to have a leather version of kind of queering that. And again, taking this like very specific notion of what gender is supposed to be. If we think about like very conventional pageantry and that very almost patriarchal notion of very narrow range of femininity, and being allowed to expand that and play with that and do different things with it.
Yeah, and it was really an interesting experience. So I ended up being the only, competitor in the Miss contest, which it's not like you against the other person. It becomes you against Olympic scoring standards. And so now you have to like make the grade. So, and you have no idea because like you don't see someone else doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing. So you have no idea like where the standard's been set, right? Or where the bar is. So you're just out there like, I'm gonna do my best, you know? There's also a formal speech where you kind of talk about your platform and things like that and what you're going to do with your title year. And that goes out, you know, for 90, or actually it was 3 minutes of amnesia under the lights. But then I wanted to talk about a little bit about the other competitors, right? So there were several for Mr. World Bear. So it's Mr. World Bear, Miss World Bear, World Cub, and World Pet. I think I missed World Cub, you know. In the
All
original.
apologies to our cub community.
Yeah. You know, and Panda is my World Cub, you know, so I really don't want to forget him. He's quite an amazing human. But the competitors for Mr. World Bear were a wide representation of, you know, queer community. You know, we had a gentleman from Brazil, Walter, and he like came in and he was like very traditionally masculine and his great body, but he embraced his culture and brought that forward, you know, and some of his displays were very traditionally like Brazilian. And then Buddha Onyx, who is Mr. World Bear, came forward, and his fantasy skit was this take on coming to America, where he had sphinxes, which were like leather pups, like serving him cheeseburgers in the bath. And, you know, I mean, come on, like it's amazing, right? It's super great. And, you know, we had Beyoncé Bear on stage when doing a drag, skit as Wonder Woman with one of our other guys who played a superhero, David, Bearded Beast. It, like, the whole weekend was just this impressive gathering of queer community. And, you know, we are talking about me as a leather bear, but bear community in general is just this really playful space that doesn't take itself too seriously, you know, and we add leather to it for me because that's my identity, part of my identity. But bear community is just playful and fun, and they don't take themselves super seriously, and, you know, they romp and they like have good times and they eat and they drink, and it's just fun.
Yeah, I mean, just the notion that we can express ourselves as queer folks in a fun way, and in a way that isn't necessarily like rallying around the protection of rights or the, you know, expansion of rights and these different things, and just be, again, I don't mean to make it sound frivolous when I say goofy, but I don't think that silliness or recreation is inherently frivolous.
No, it's not. And, you know, ultimately, for me, like, our BDSM, leather community, kink, whatever, like, it's play. We talk about it as play, right? Like, I practice BDSM. That doesn't mean I'm fucking perfect at it. Like, I practice it, you know? I think some people are like, I'm a practicing Christian. And I'm like, aha, that means you don't get it right all the time, do you? Aha. You know, but, like, you know, I like to think of it as like I'm practicing a musician or practicing a thing. You know, we're learning and we're doing and we're growing and we're getting better at it. But we're not perfect at it. Go ahead.
I think like the playful aspect tends to be really important in any kind of community building where you're actually building a strong community. Because I'm gonna go to a weird tangent, but I used to be a big part of the hardcore scene, and the scene I used to be involved in like Leeds, England, was at the time really fun and goofy, and I had a great time. And then I went to a different one when I moved here, and everyone was very serious.
You mean the hardcore community can be fun and goofy?
They could. It was amazing. There was.
I mean, play is how humans connect, right?
Right.
It's baked into our mammalian DNA.
And I think like when you're playing, you're collaborating. When people take things very seriously and get very bogged down in their, I am this is my brand, and I'm very Batman. It's people are competition then rather than community. And I think like the more serious people take things like that, people get more, I guess, bogged down in winning or
Almost missing the point of it.
right, or maintaining like this facade, like you've got to keep this. But when you can be playful and have fun, like I think it sounds frivolous, but I think it's a more productive state of community building than.
I think there's vulnerability in it.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, and for me, I really like to come from a place of vulnerability and authenticity and like not take myself so seriously, because you know what, I can be like, yeah, like I'm a person. Like this weekend, you know, I'm out in LA and I'm representing Miss World Bear, International Queen of the Bears, and blah. I get 3 feet in the bar and I'm mobbed with people, you know, and I start talking to the contestants who are doing this, and they're like, oh, I'm so intimidated to meet you. Like you've got this cool, you know, resume. And I'm like, look, man, I'm just a person who's had a really coincidentally cool opportunities that I've said yes to. And you are here and you are saying yes to those coincidentally cool opportunities, and like just keep going. Like the doors will open for you, just be open, you know, to walking through them.
Words to live by. No,
yeah.
I appreciate that.
And I wanted to kind of loop back into, there's the world pet, right?
Okay.
And so pet communities and critter communities are also really, really playful. I don't know if you guys have seen like puppies, the puppy community here in Austin, in San Antonio, like pup community is becoming really big. But you know, pet and critter play isn't all about puppies. There's ponies. There's, we have the North American pet is a lion. Yeah. And so, you know, there are kitties, you know, kitty.
Identities to explore.
Yeah. We have a burlesque artist here in Austin who does a raccoon burlesque, which was... I mean, what can you say about somebody who's like stripping out of their clothes and they're like doing it playfully, and, you know, they pull a baguette out of a trash can and you're just like...
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Who doesn't love bread and raccoons?
Yeah, I mean, I've known Miss O'Kist long enough to not find any form of burlesque shocking at this point. There's so much that you can do, whether we're talking about burlesque performance or really any type of gender performance, which I so love that we're talking about. We actually do have a small stack of calls coming in, but before we get to the lines, let's take a quick moment and see what's been going on around the rest of the ACA.
Aware that poly people aren't necessarily about the sex. Yeah, a lot of us are, but you know, we're not
Which is valid.
about
Sex is nice. I like sex. For goodness sakes.
We're just two dudes on the internet, and anything that we've said today is just the opinion of two dudes of the internet, not two physicians or two professional philosophers or two anything really. I mean, just call-in show hosts, which is the lowest credibility on the credibility ladder.
We can't prove we're not XXX in this situation, living in a simulation. I mean, we can't prove that a deity does not exist. That doesn't mean that I go around bathing in Pascal's wager going, oh look, I can't prove it doesn't exist.
That's a dingleberry. You know what a dingleberry is, right? Tell you what, go to Urban Dictionary after this program is done, and then come back to me, and you see what happens. Okay?
Should I use my work computer?
Yeah, definitely.
It sounds like you want to talk about morality and how it does not apply to God because he's the ultimate being.
Hello, I even have biblical evidence for this.
Oh, that's gonna mean a lot to us. Oh man, Ben, did you hear this? He has biblical evidence. Get ready to be pummeled into submission.
Well, let's jump on the phones and talk to John in Colorado. John, what's on your mind tonight?
Hey, I just wanted to call in and share my story of moving away from Christianity and finding a new belief system because of my wife, who is bisexual.
Yeah, no, please tell us about it. How did that open some doors for you?
So I guess, it's kind of hard to explain, but basically, I used to be in the military, and I was a really, at the time, before I met her, I was pretty devout Christian. I was going to the Bible study groups and everything. And then I started getting into purity culture a little bit, kind of existing on the peripherals of that. But, I had come from some bad dating experiences. So I kind of just was hands off of just women. And that just kind of seemed like that fit in at a good time in my life. And then I got deployed, came back, got disillusioned with the church because of the things that I experienced there. And then my wife, and then I met my wife, and she told me I'm bisexual. And I actually, honestly, my first thought was, wow, that's really awesome. That's cool. Number one, I've never met anybody who is bisexual, was so open about it. And, it didn't bother me. Of course, being a male, I was just immediately thinking, oh man, possibility of threesome, right? Cool, kind of a thing. But then as time went on, I kind of started to learn more about her because she was raised Catholic as well. And she was from the Midwest, South Dakota, which is heart of Christian Catholic or Christian territory, basically, deep red state. So, I started to figure out how she reconciled that. And then years went by, I kind of converted to Catholicism. And then I ended up having basically a couple things started happening to me, which was I was in the church, and I wanted to lead a men's Bible study at the church because I had been doing an unofficial thing with just me and my friends, and the church actually ended up turning me down because I was living with my fiance at the time, and that really shook my world. Basically, it was like, dude, I've been doing all these things, and I'm been jumped through all the hoops and converted and everything, and now you're telling me no, just because of this one thing, And
it's an incredible inconvenience to the church that queer people are going to continue to be born in devout spaces. And by just getting to know a queer person who exists, how a lot of those threads of Christianity start to fall apart.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. That basically, right on the nail there. And so so that was my first experience. And then I kind of started got really bitter and just really angry and upset. And I was just I don't really want to go to church anymore. I wasn't at the point where I was about to be oh yeah, I don't believe all that stuff and it's crazy but I did start questioning things. And I did start wondering what is exactly the church's stance on LGBTQ plus, because hey, here I am married to one. I don't see a problem with it. I never saw a problem with it or any of that and any LGBTQ plus people ever, and so I'm what is all this issue? Because I've been hearing rumblings about it throughout my time, and even in my home life, as far as where I was raised a little bit as well. And so then I started really asking around about it, and I was never getting a really straight answer. I was always getting platitudes oh yeah, love the person, hate the sin. And it's well, what does that even mean?
Yeah, when this sin is integral to who I am or how God made me, that whole narrative starts to fall apart. I guess I want to say I'm really sorry that the two of you experienced that bigotry, but really glad that it shook you loose from a belief system that wasn't serving you. Where do you find yourself today? Like, how is that deconstruction process working out for you?
Pretty good. Yeah, I ended up a few weeks ago, going to a Buddhist group, meditation group, turned more towards Buddhism. For a while there, it was scary because, I kind of just lost. It felt like the rug had been swept out from underneath me. I didn't know, but it really just forced me to ask myself my questions about what I believe instead of what they believe, trying to conform to that, and really try and understand, like, okay, who am I really? And what do I really believe in? And, I found Buddhism, and I think that's, the best, as closest. I'm like leaning more towards like Taoism / Buddhism, which is also reflective of not only my belief system, but a little bit of as my background as well. So, it turned out really well, more peaceful. I kind of let people's bigotry kind of just loose off me now.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you think that? Unfortunate for you.
I'm glad you shook loose of that bigotry and that you found the ACA. And I guess I'll just encourage you to keep asking questions, to have that standard of evidence and to seek the truth with a little bit of skepticism. We've got a few other folks stacking up, but did y'all have any other questions or comments before we move on to the next call?
Yeah, I mean, I think I found refuge early on in kind of coming out in queer space in the pagan community. And I think it was because it was just like, you're here, you're accepted, you belong with us. Like, please, be welcome. And ultimately, like, that really wasn't my space, but I was attracted to it because they were so inclusive.
Right. It didn't have all of these edicts about what thou shalt be.
Right. But I think, too, that some of our communities of spirituality have come back from, like, we're pushing people away with our theology. We want people to be with us, and we would rather have community and an embrace of spirituality than, to make people other. And so I think, I'm always intrigued when I find other queer folks or leather folks or people in spiritual spaces, because, we have one of the folks who I really enjoy, he's also Muslim and in fetish space. And it's just like, wow, like, we are an incredibly inclusive community just on different aspects. And I don't know. I like talking to people about, their spirituality.
What you believe and why. It's a important question. And John, I'm glad that you are finding some relief. And I appreciate you giving us a call tonight.
Yeah, and if you haven't listened to the song By Wife Energy, go listen to it. It's great.
All right. Well, let's keep it rolling. We've got a good stack of people here, and I want to talk to HAIFISH in Ohio. HAIFISH, what's on your mind tonight?
Hi. I just wanted to call and say hi to Daddy. I am one of the critters from out in Ohio, and I love talking about accessibility and inclusivity, and noticing that not all pets are puppies, because that is what you see a lot of times. So it's so nice to hear someone put that to a platform and talk about femininity and leather spaces, which are so cis male sometimes. That's just very encouraging and very, I don't know, brings a smile to my face.
Hey.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this, since we have you on the line. How do you feel the culture is progressing? Is it fair to say that things are more accessible to more people now than they were 5-10 years ago? Even in this moment of cultural snapback and all of the anger around the Obergefell case and everything that we're seeing around drag and all of these conversations around grooming, do you feel like we are headed in the right direction, at least when it comes to leather spaces?
I feel like there are a lot of groups that are making headway, and one of those would be, I would nod back to the international Mr. Boot Black stepping out of IML and saying hey, you guys have been transphobic for the past 10 years and we're not dealing with it anymore. Because for a long time, I feel like leather has been about performative allyship and not actually doing the work. So, I mean, part of like my platform in Cincinnati has been about doing the work and making these spaces more accessible to people that don't fall into those categories. And we talk about, you know, bringing security to drag shows. And hey, you know, like being in Ohio, part of that is, do we want to talk about getting a group of gays together to go take our like concealed carry permit classes? Because that's how, like, if the police aren't going to protect you, who will? So, and I've just seen the community come together so much. I guess I think about like Roe v. Wade and all that happened last year. You know, there was such a outpouring of like, hey, I have a doctor. I know someone. Like, let me help you. And that's how I got my bilateral self-injectomy, was just by word of mouth of other people in the community saying, I know someone that will do this.
There was a lot of underground, like, hey, like, these are pro women, you know, women's rights, women's opportunity to choose how and what we do with our bodies. You know, at 29, when I had my hysterectomy, my ex-husband had to sign off on it.
Which is still madness and still remarkably common.
I mean, and at 29, like, you're like, oh shit, there's this man that's controlling my life. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of work to do still.
No doubt.
But I do think that places are changing. You know, for me, the biggest thing that I think of is like, when you think about like the bear campgrounds, at least here in like the Midwest, they are always all male, except for like 1 or 2 days of the summer. They'll have like inclusive days, but other than that, it's all male all year. And I'm like, can we like maybe allow people of all sorts of genders instead of saying like you have to be male, and what does male even mean to you?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel much more masculine when I'm in all of my like Daddie Danger gear. Like I feel very powerful, and I mean, you know, jokingly, like I've always been the person who's used the power tools in relationships, you know, like, I don't know, I feel very mask of center, even in my extremely high femme, you know, outward appearance.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, and it was really, you know, we talk about inclusion, but I've seen more, you know, interpreters, sign language interpreters at different events.
That.
Yeah.
You know, I was really surprised when I was at the LA leather bear competition. This like beautiful kind of feral person just like hopped up on stage, had a crop top that was like, "Hey, colonizer." And I mean, as this French Irish woman, you know, I'm like, is that like a turn on? Or like, no, I'm just kidding. But then they started, you know, they were the sign language interpreter. And then I come to understand that they're like, you know, a PhD mental health professional, like, you know, leader in the queer community of like sacred sexuality and things like this. And I'm just like, wow. You know, I already thought they were like an interesting person, and then they're a sign language interpreter, and then they're like this interesting mental health person. And I'm just like, layers.
I've learned so much like dirty ASL from going to leather events.
And I really appreciate the extreme facial expressions on the interpreter. You know, their faces. It's so good.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for giving us a call tonight. Anything else before we move on to the next call?
No, thank you guys so much for the show. It's been so great to listen to.
Hey, glad to hear it. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
Yeah. So we do have a few more that I would like to speak to, but just in case we don't get around to it, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your platform and what that meant for you competing for this title.
Yeah, so I thought I was going to stroll in and be like, you know, femme inclusion in bare spaces. And I had a moment where I'm like, that's not what this is about right now. Like, you know, I think we need to accept ourselves before we can accept others.
Sure.
You know, and so my platform rolled back from like femme inclusion in bare spaces to just radical self-acceptance. And that's really what helped me find myself and my path and become really comfortable in who I am as a person.
How you became Miss World Bear is because of that effort within yourself.
And, you know, there's this concept of radical self-acceptance. And so you take back power in the things that people use against you by accepting them in and about yourself. You know, and it's like, and also kind of demoralizing or like taking away the moral application to things that we identify with. So like, you know, I am a bear. Okay. I am queer. Okay. You know, and then we get to, I'm fat. Right. And so for me, someone may come at me like, oh, well, like you're a fat person. I'm like, yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
That's not an
like,
insult. That's an adjective.
Like I accept that about me. There's not a morality that I associate with like, oh, I shouldn't be that, or I should be that, or I should be less of that, or I should be more of that, or blah.
But what about your health?
You know, like I'm healthy. I mean, someone the other day was like, damn, you flexible. I'm like, you know, anyway. But, you know, these things about ourselves that are potentially weaponized by other people, the more that we accept those things about ourselves and they become our own identity, like people can't use them against you, you know? And so, but also accepting things about yourself that you might not like, you know? Like, I'm a neurodivergent kid. I'm dyslexic as fuck. I have to read a lot for work. And the other day, several months ago, it's like a timeline thing.
It's all the other day.
Yeah,
It's
it's
not
all the other day. But, you know, a drag queen was going to read my bio on stage, and then she like hands me her cell phone and she's like, here, you do it. And here I am in a bar full of people, like trying to like read this woman's cell phone.
Talking about yourself.
Talking about myself. And
a subject you probably know a lot about.
Right? And it is just this blank stare moment where I'm like, I can't read this phone in the like the light of the bar, you know, and I'm just like, but that's it. Like in that moment, I chose to be authentic with the people who were in that bar. And I'm like, look, guys, I'm neurospicy as heck. Like, I'm not going to read my own bio to you. Like, I'm just going to like wing it and tell you who I am as a person, you know? And again, I get to that place where it's like, I am just a person and we are all just people, you know. Our leather title holders, they're all just people. They're just collections of like cool experiences and interesting thoughts. And so, again, the platform is radical self-acceptance. You know, there's a part of us that is our light, our joy, our sparkle, our bear. It is the thing that burns inside of us that keeps us going. And I think that we should all harness that little bright spot and just fan the flames of it and move in that direction.
Integrate the shadow, accept it, own it, and then come into that power. Yeah.
That's one of the things actually that ends up being the biggest gate to a lot of people in a lot of things is everyone has like this weird, everyone's got their own personal shame. And a
Their
lot
own
of it is
personal weirdness.
Right. A lot of it is like, it's put on us by society. And I think for a lot of people, I mean, in various spaces I've been in, people like, oh, I want to do X, but I'm too scared because why? And I think sometimes just seeing somebody exist and, you know, they're like you, they're out there doing stuff, I think it helps people accept that about themselves because shame is like that, the fear of the reflection that society puts back at you. And if we only see one reflection, it's really easy for that shame to get stronger and hold a lot of people back. But when people are open about who they are and how they are, and then, you know, are out there being visible, because a lot of shame is used to keep people invisible that people don't want to see for whatever reason. It may be it books the norm and it challenges power in various areas. And I think just existing openly as you are it sounds small, but I think it's one of the biggest things that anyone can really do.
Biggest challenges that we have as people is accepting who we are and living that truth. And so I for 2023, I think people have seen me wear a key around my neck for years and years and years. I've put the key in the key box. I put it in the jewelry box, and I'm wearing a compass in 2023, and it is go in the direction of your dreams and live the life you've imagined.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's helping me fully realize that I chose this. Like, I went out, I ran for a bear title. Like, I'm putting my personal vulnerability forward in front of myself. And I am encouraging other people to be vulnerable. I'm encouraging other people to accept the things about themselves and hold those truths, to their highest power for themselves. And if you are, a puppy, a pony, a kitty, fully embrace it. If you are, in the closet and you want to come out of the closet, turn the doorknob. Like, your queer family's out here waiting for you. Go to the bar, like, come to the spaces where we are, where other people like you are. Munches, there are like online places like Avon for our asexual community and other, kind of asexual spectrum folks.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about like gender transgression, but really just being willing to be yourself and be yourself out loud helps to reduce shame for others and just build a more just society. I mean, am I oversimplifying it?
I don't think so. I mean, like, I'm a plus size person. I'm a bear. I'm leather. I'm queer. And I want people who look like me, who feel like they can express themselves, to like come out and join me,
Mm-hmm.
like, let's just be like present with each other.
Yeah. Well, we've got a few more calls, and
do it.
Whisper in Utah has some questions about, I think, some of the terminology we're using.
Yeah.
So, Whisper, what can we walk you through?
Hi. So I was just listening, and there's stuff like bear, otter, lion. I think there's cougar. I don't know. I got really confused, and I was like, I thought stuff like gay meant, bear meant like large gay men with hair, and like otter was like a twink or something. Are you guys saying it's something else? Because I'm not sure what it is. I'm not really into it that much.
Let's expand on that Urban Dictionary definition and go from there. Yeah.
And so I'm going to put this out there and say identity is what you make of it. And so the moment that you identify with a community, I feel like you belong. And so I definitely find that in bear community. I was talking to a friend this morning, and they are a person, a trans person, and they were like, I met one of the World Bear family, and I was having a moment of self-doubt, and I was really in my emotions, and I'm identifying as trans and coming into my female aspects, but they're in that kind of crossover of like, I'm not entirely certain. And they met one of our bear siblings, and he was like, you're here. You are who you are, and we accept you for who you are. Welcome. Come hang out with us. Come be with us. Come be community. And so I think that we have, the who's in the zoo, the bears, the otters, the cougars, and we have these kind of fun idea of like what they are, the Urban Dictionary definitions. But ultimately, like, if those are groups of people that you feel like you identify with, like, go hang out with them. Like, be that.
People are people, no matter what banner they gather under. And they're each going to be individuals, but we can use these labels to maybe find somebody that we can resonate with.
Yeah, I like to use labels to accurately describe experiences. Like, they're descriptive, not prescriptivist, but I like to be as accurate as possible. So that's one of the reasons I'm curious about these labels.
People are hard to categorize.
Figure out which one I would fall under too, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I think we also have multiple labels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like my box is covered in labels.
Well, one thing I think about so when people make these spaces and they're public spaces, you've got events, things like it mentioned munches and things like that. Like a lot of it, you don't have to be the thing to go to the thing because people are there doing stuff and they want people to be there. That's the whole point. So sometimes if you're leaning in a direction and you're not sure, you can still go to those spaces and see, because it's hard to know. There's definitions, and it's hard to know which one you're going to click with until you get to kind of experience it. But you don't have to have the answers to experience it.
Reading it on the page is
Right.
not how you learn about yourself in that sense.
Well, I think our labels evolve over time, right? Because I think if you would have talked to like 18, 19-year-old me, I was like staunchly bisexual. Like I had just come out of the like bi closet. I think it's probably more like the quilt chest. I don't know. But it, I'm like, I identified as bisexual for a long time, and it took me this, evolution of person to now be like, I'm queer, like, and then to take on a bear label, but also, our identities change over time.
Yeah,
I mean,
people are fluid, people grow, people change.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I used to think I was cis, and then I woke up one day and I was like, holy shit, I'm actually agender, asexual, and aromantic. I'm like, I can't believe I didn't realize this before.
That is an experience I know well.
And it's
I just woke up one day and I was like, holy crap, so social gender constructs, they're not real. I can do whatever the hell I want.
Right? We can do whatever the hell we want. And like, it's really amazing when you step into that space and you're like, fuck it, I am who I am. Like, and when you get those words that you can like string together and bring other people who are interested in like things, and have similar experiences, I think that's that community building piece, because we ultimately, we want to belong and we want to be with others and for, even our introverted folks, like, there are online communities or other, communities where they grow and blossom and exchange ideas,
Yeah, since I'm like aro ace and I'm not very kinky, I have like zero idea in any of this or no experience. So I have no idea what these terms mean, how they're applied. It's been a long journey finding out for myself.
Yeah, and I just appreciate your both your curiosity, because as humans, I think we can very quickly be assigned a gender and an orientation and a lot of these labels at birth, and then we don't really stop to ask about them. So anytime I hear a human being expressing some curiosity around, well, what else is out there and how might it fit me to try that on? But also there is a allyship component here. I don't think that we all need to have like sophisticated opinions on whether or not this person constitutes an otter. That can get really messy and gross really quickly. Right. But having an interest in some of these labels and a shared vocabulary has a lot of value.
Well, and I think as we continue to evolve, as we deconstruct gender and we deconstruct sexuality, and we, are breaking it apart and re-assimilating it in different areas. Like, I'm perpetually involved in kind of community conversations, and I hear terms and things, and I'm like, fuck, am I old? Like, like I heard another term the other day, and I was like, what is that? I don't know what that is. Like, I'm on the breath of 40, and they're sweet summer child. But
I'm only 27, and this is the first time hearing of some of these things too.
But one thing I will also say is, and this is a lot of sort of queer spaces and a lot of, I'm going to say kink spaces. Sometimes a lot of the spaces are, like we've mentioned before, there's lots of overlap. And I know that a lot of queer spaces can feel very compulsory sexuality-y.
Yeah.
And that, I know, like...
I learned that the hard way.
Right. And I think, I know for myself, a lot of time, there have been spaces where I have a lot of things in common, with a lot of the people there, and I'm interested in exploring that space. But I mean, I'm asexual too, so I'm not going to be, touting my sexual anythings. And I think like a lot of these spaces are, even if if it's a very sex positive space, that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be all sexy all the time. So,
like, shout out to queer platonic relationships,
yes.
right? Like, I've found some of my most amazing friends in these queer platonic relationship spaces, and even like coming out of potentially sexual relationships with other queer folk, being like, hey, we can maintain this space where we still have a deep connection, but we're not sexually intimate anymore, but we still value each other as family and friends and community. And you have those really intimate bonds with someone, but like, shout out to queer platonic relationships, man. Like, co-parenting like kids as queers, like, that's a huge thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I am the village that raises the child.
Right.
Yes, and honestly, I am still a 5, so I'm like in my village. Like, I'm still finding my village.
I do have a couple questions. There's critters. What's critter space and what are pets?
Yeah, so there's the so we talk about puppy play, and you see pups all the time, or they're kind of the most most visually represented pup community.
The poster animal.
Yeah, the poster
the
animal.
Pup culture,
So pets and critters are other animal dynamics or other animal spirits that are taken on, because we don't want to say that everyone.
They're kind of gender. I get that now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so like, I like to joke that I am a fluffy white domesticated house cat, like Marie from Aristocats. Like, we don't start fights, but we end them. Right?
But spirit animal has always been the octopus.
Yeah. I mean, we see crossover into fur culture, furries, but there's scalies, which are, and dragons, and all kinds of, you have mythical animals, mythical creatures.
The furry community is freaking awesome.
I tend to agree,
I'm very impressed with the creativity, and there's a lot of crossover with the long furby community and the furry community. So,
I mean, when you get into the weird queer stuff, we keep talking about Venn diagrams, and yeah, a lot of this all comes together. So Whisper, I really appreciate your questions. Was there anything else before we move on for the night?
Let's see. Did you answer what critter was?
Yeah, so critter is a more inclusive term that we use because...
Catch-all? Other?
It's a more inclusive term because we're not all puppies. And pet implies that you might be a domesticated house animal. Like, so you're someone's pet.
Is that like a kink thing?
It can be. It can also just be a headspace place.
Sure. And I'll actually say we are talking about pet space in particular on this show in 2 weeks. So I'll really encourage you to tune in then, because we are going to be talking about, yes, like pet play, but in particular that kind of mindset that goes into it. But please continue.
So critter is this attempt at a more inclusive term to not necessarily say pup or puppy, and not necessarily say pet, meaning like domesticated house pet, but to say that we are, inclusive of raccoons and dragons and, outdoor tomcat kitties, just a more holistic approach to pet play.
It's kind of like
animal play.
Almost like a headspace or a symbolism of a part of yourself. So if someone was, I'm a feral anarchist, they might be leaning more towards the, eat trash, do crime, raccoon type thing.
I like that we were on the same vibe with that.
It's kind of like, I guess, animal symbolism for a part of your personality and who you are. Would that be a kind of accurate-ish way?
Yeah.
Yeah, a form of expression, connecting with one piece of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Whisper, thank you so much for your call. We're getting a little bit long, and I want to sneak in at least one more call before we walk out. But before we do, Ms. O'Kiss, I wanted to ask if you could expand a little bit on what you were saying a moment ago about I guess, participating in these spaces as sort of a non-member, and how to do that without being like the stereotype of the straight bachelorette party going into the gay bar. You know, that notion of like being respectful of that space.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that can be a tricky tightrope to walk. But as a general rule, all communities exist because people joined them. And every member of every single community was an outsider at some point, because no one, for the most part, and I'm sure there are some ways not true, when people aren't born into them. And a lot of like these events, I used to go to things by myself a lot. I was into music my friends did not like. So I could either miss out or go alone. And I went alone a lot. And I think if you go in with an honest sense of curiosity and just talk to people, you don't even have to ask questions about the community specifically. If you just show up and just hang out with people, you can start to learn. And anyone who is setting up a table with like a little plush on the table so everyone knows how to find them, for example, they want random people to come up and walk up and hang out with them. That's why those spaces exist. Yeah. And it can be terrifying, and it is terrifying. But yeah,
it becomes less terrifying the next time.
And I think like as long as like the bachelorette, the Cis-Het bachelorette, the big problem with that from the performers I know has been when people want to jump on the table and start going woo, and all of a sudden making this space about themselves,
take over the space. So
yeah, or there's a lack of consent in like touching a performer's body or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I tend, and this might be the autistic person in me also. Just show up, and it's okay to hang back a little, like introduce yourself and just take in what's happening. And you can even ask, like if you outright ask, what are, I'm not saying the rules, but
standards and practices.
Yeah, what are the guidelines here?
Yeah.
People will tend to help you out. If you're just interested in what does this mean, you can literally ask that. This is one of the great things actually about like autistic social skills is you don't have to dance around anything. You can literally just ask. So if you go and you're like, hey, my name's, I don't know, Tim, I'm new here. I'm interested in what y'all are about. Like, what's this about?
What the hell is a leather lady bear?
And
the extroverts will surround you.
People love talking about themselves and their shit.
Mm-hmm.
And they like being given the opportunity to, especially if it's something that is a little covert for, regular life. You don't get a lot of opportunities. So if you just ask, like, what's this all about? People will tell you. And most people in most spaces that I've been in, and I've been in some weird spaces, I'll tell you. As an asexual person who's been to been invited to several orgies, I've been in some weird spaces. But people are excited for anyone who is authentically interested in what they're about and is open to learning, because people want to be understood and they want community. So, don't jump on the table and be like, I'm here. Like, that's not the best way to
Unless you
start.
have a fat stack of ones or plus-size dollars, like
something to earn it.
Tip your drag queens, tip your entertainers, tip your artists, tip your bartenders. Art is a form of work.
Mm-hmm.
But like you can show up, and if intimate small gatherings are scary, go to like the pageants, for example. Like if you go to like the bear pageants, there are audience members you can go and see, and you can get a feel for things. And I think.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you don't fit everything, if you fit something, like there's always commonality. And I think people, especially in alternative spaces, queer spaces, tend to be more seeking the commonality than they are the differences.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, like they might be as interested in your differences as you are in theirs. People want to learn back. So, just don't be afraid to show up, because that's literally why these events exist. Like it's an invite. And, ask questions or just watch.
Yeah, be respectful. Sure. So Carlos, I wanted to talk to you out of California. We are just about to wrap up for the night, but I figured your question was actually a great one for us to go out on. So without any further ado, Carlos, what did you want to ask tonight?
Hi, Daddie Danger. It's Carlos, Mr. LA Leather Bear 2023. I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity, and it's been so nice hearing you talk more because we didn't get much of a chance with this past crazy weekend. But I wanted to know kind of what's next for you aside from your crazy worldwide tour. Like, what is the next thing that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, so part of it is travel. We're going to, I say we, I'm going to North American Bear Weekend in February. And then there's all kinds of events. My 40th birthday is in March. And so I will be at South Plains Leather Fest. I'm incredibly excited about that. But kind of in the concept of me, my leather family, they are kind of a big tobacconist family. Like they're into cigars, and that's cigar culture is kind of another little Venn diagram portion. But I'm actually learning how to roll cigars. The cutting, the packing, the rolling of them, the finishing, how to cut them, how to to do that. So that's been an interesting journey that I've started, but also being able to teach them additional classes. I've applied to Thrive, which is an online conference for kink and mental health. And I'd like to present to some more mental health oriented classes I say classes like you're going to attend like some collegiate lecture, but it's basically, again, me with my own brand of Daddie Danger bullshit and some Brene Brown inspiration and a fartload of education that I paid a lot of money for. Just talking about mental health, but also shame and resilience and how we can use trauma-informed I don't want to say care because, our community isn't care, but trauma-informed information to make a better experience for ourselves and our partners in the lifestyle that we're leading, and how we can use shame and resilience to transition out of these spaces where we're ashamed or we feel guilt or, just these negative associated emotions, and move it into ownership of our darker sides and putting that out into the world. So
sounds like a pretty full plate.
Yeah. and just really out there talking to folks about who they are as people and what they want in their lives, and encouraging people to live their best selves. So
awesome. I'm so happy I look forward to seeing it all, and hopefully I get a Daddie Danger rolled cigar sometime down the line.
Y'all, this is the sweetest person. I just had the greatest time getting to know you this weekend. And I definitely got more of you than I think you got of me on the judgy side.
Yeah, so thank you so much for giving us a call tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Y'all have a good one.
You too.
You too. All right. Well, we're a little bit over time, but before Miss O'Kiss walks us through the poll and takes us out for the night, I guess I just wanted to take a moment and ask you, what, if anything, are you hoping that the vanilla cis-het world can take away from your work, from the platform that you stand on, and I guess just sort of your role as a community leader in this way?
Yeah, so I'm going to be really real here for a moment. I have invited my mom to my step down, right? And so that's the moment where you're like, these are all the cool things that I did in my title year, and now I'm passing this on to someone else. Mm-hmm. But as part of World Bear Weekend, we have the Jason Hall Spirit of the Bear Award, and Jason Hall's parents come, and Jason passed away from a brain tumor, and his, very beautifully straight, vanilla, older white couple, they didn't come to understand his life until he was in hospice. And I think for me, the thing that I want out of this is that bringing my mom into this space for her to really understand who I am as a person and kind of open her eyes to the community as a whole, and you know, all of these things that I am are really, we talk about kink and we talk about it being sexy and we talk about all these things, but it's, at the end of the day, it's community and it's really wholesome, you know? And so bringing, you know, my mom into that is, I think, part of what I want to get out of it. And, you know, I have a feeling that September is going to be a heart-opening experience for her. And so
beautiful. Well, I
maybe
appreciate
maybe
you.
I'm going to open that door for other people's parents and, you know, other folks who are, you know, a little less forgiving.
Well, and thank you for opening that door a little bit for us tonight. Folks who aren't familiar with bear culture or any of these other identities, and really, I think just kind of encouraging people to get out there and to connect with people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So with that, I'll let you read the poll and start to take us out for tonight, if you like.
This is probably not going to surprise many people. This is a very, very down the line poll. We had 81% of people voted that gender is who you are, and 19 were for what you do.
How does that land with y'all? That notion that gender is I guess who you are or part of your identity, but is it also an action? I mean, how would y'all vote here?
If TikTok has taught me anything, is that there are beautiful lesbians with axes who are chopping down trees, and I'm just here for it. Like traditionally,
whatever that gender construct is, I like it.
I think I'm interested in this one too now.
Right? Like the Paul Bunyan lesbians.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here for this.
I'll be honest. I always find gender terribly confusing, and I have ever since I was a child. As a kid, all of my interests and everything I gravitated towards was mostly masculine. But I always looked very feminine, so
Really,
I was
very hard, same.
Describe myself as a boy in dresses was how I describe myself, literally as like a tween. And I think it's maybe a part of who you are that impacts what you do. I think it's like the little thing on the inside that shows up on the outside rather than the outside changing the inside. I think, it's just who you are.
There's a cyclical relationship. And I mean, anytime we're talking about human hearts, we're getting into squishy territory, and our words often fail us. And that doesn't mean that the conversation isn't worth having. But I do appreciate that we can't necessarily divide it into those two categories.
And, maybe it started as like a primal predator thing, like, oh, the women were the gatherers and the men were the hunters. And maybe that's where we got this thing from, I don't know. But as we have technological advances and as we come together as a society and we really realize that, people have different qualities and they bring different skills to the table, I think having, all of our best qualities amplified and put those things out into the world, really diversifies what's available. Regardless of how people identify.
Yeah. Well, that's a great place for us to leave it.
It is. And if for everyone who's enjoyed this show and wants to keep up with everything that is happening here at the ACA, you can do that on the website atheist-community.org or email the show, which is sex@atheist-community.org. Or also with TV at atheistcommunity.org. We have a lot of .orgs. Truth Wanted and Talk Heathen will be Dan and Keely Lachlan. AXP will be Jim and Jamie Boone.
Yeah, and those are live in the studio this month, just like our show right now.
Studio.
Yeah, it's
and we
so
actually
much
have
fun doing this
people
in
watching
person.
out there.
It's nice having an audience. Yeah. So I do hope that if folks are in the Austin area, they will come and join us in person.
And speaking of the Austin area, we are looking for people to come help. So if you are Austin or Austin adjacent and interested in, being a part of this show or the shows in general, we're looking for crew members for the shows. So we're looking for people to assist with audio, call screening, all that fun stuff.
All kinds
Literally,
of the technical stuff that makes us look so good, even if we don't understand how any of it works.
like the Oscar categories that don't get enough time, which I'm always very excited for. And I'm sad they don't film those as much. I'm like, I want to know about lighting techs. And I'm not even being silly. I genuinely do.
I needed a whole 5-minute instruction on how to wear the earplugs.
Seriously,
I'm still doing it wrong. But you can get in touch with us if you're interested in volunteering and being a part of these shows. Again, at tv@atheist.community.org, and the production team will get back to you. And they're real eager for new people, so they will get back. And also tiny.cc/ACR.
AEN podcasts.
I am bad at reading, as we described earlier. It's the one-stop shop. Do you catch the audio version of the show and all of our fabulous sexuality merch? And there is a fan group on Facebook, which is actually a lot of fun as well. And you can also connect with us here at tiny.cc/ACD Discord and tiny.cc/merch ACA for the aforementioned merch. And do we have any links for you?
I got behind the social media branding thing, so I am Daddie Danger across all of the platforms. So Instagram, Facebook, the red and black page that people are aware of, spicy. Yeah. I was on Twitter. I am not really on Twitter anymore.
Hard to blame you. Yep, fair to say. Well, and finally, we want to take a moment and thank everybody who did do so much work to help us put in our goddamn earphones and get this table set up and make this place look so great. All of the work that they're doing to have this incredible live weekend of shows is going to be so exciting. So a quick moment to thank our crew and all of their hard work. Appreciate y'all so much, everything that you're doing live in studio.
Especially the person who brought Girl Scout cookies. Bless you.
It's a good time. It's a good time being here live in studio.
Yeah.
Before we go out there to see if there are any cookies left, are there any kind of final thoughts or last impressions that you want to leave with the audience tonight?
I think, don't be afraid to get out there. Let your bright spot shine. And if you're too much, let somebody else go find less.
Yeah, fair enough. Well said. So I guess no matter how much you are, whether you are a bear, a pup, an octopus, or a unicorn, this is
a human, just a
human. If
what is it? What we do in the shadows? I'm just a regular human guy.
Just a regular, normal
Jackie
human.
Daytona.
Just a Jackie Daytona.
Good idea for all of us to take a quiet moment to ourselves tonight and give yourself a big old orgasm, or better yet, give somebody else one.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.